Welcome to the Bald Brad Show. Our lead story of the day is regarding the Washington Post accusing bigoted right-wing extremists, again, their words, not mine, of inciting anti-democracy boycott on Target. Wait till we jump into all the nonsense. Before we get into it, though, support a true American patriot by hitting that like and subscribe button. Leave us a short, sweet comment down below. And if you haven't already, check out baldbrad.com for all our merchandise, as well as our book, Trojan Horse, How the Left is Destroying America. You're seeing it in real time, folks. Again, our first segment here is regarding the Washington Post receiving pushback for publishing an article painting conservatives who support the Target boycott as extremists and opponents of democracy. You see this time and time again, especially from the Biden administration, where if anyone goes against the narrative of the progressive left as well as the Democrat Party, you're now an extremist. The MAGA supporters are a threat to democracy, according to Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. So that's kind of the narrative that's being pushed right now. The Washington Post published an article titled, "Target Gets Cut in Cultural Crossfire Over Pride Month Items." Notice that they leave out that those Pride Month items are targeting children. That's always left out of the conversation, even though it's interjected within the conversation within itself. The article about supposed right-wing extremism stemming from a retail boycott begins with the account of a female customer allegedly upset because Target was, quote, carrying Pride Month merchandise. Now, they've been doing this for quite some time, so it's nothing new. I think it's just kind of catching on to the American public that they have been doing this, and more importantly, been targeting our children regarding all this. Before, it was primarily going after adults, and hey, you know, whatever, you're an adult, do whatever you want. But the second you start going after people's kids and targeting their kids with this type of advertising and this indoctrination that's happening in the school system and everywhere else, you know, people are going to be pissed off about it, and that's exactly what's happening here. The woman reportedly used her own scissors to cut her Target credit card in front of the guest services at a Target location in South Florida and informed employees, quote, "I'm never shopping here again." I think that's a little bit dramatic and theatrical. I myself wouldn't do something like that. I think, again, it's a little bit over the top, but people are fed up with it. And I think people should cut up their credit cards regardless. Credit cards are not a good thing. If you don't have money to pay for something, then you probably shouldn't buy it other than a house. Look, I get that idea, but it's not a shocker that you're going to need to purchase some sort of consumer product or service in the future, like a car. You know you're going to need a car. You should just save up for one. Easier said than done. That's for another video. Well, the manager of the store told the outlet that there were several tense encounters that workers have reported over LGBTQ plus items. Ticked off customers allegedly accused Target of shoving your woke agenda down our throats, and employees were reportedly called child groomers. I don't think it's fair to go after the employees. They just work there. We all probably worked at retail or some sort of fast food chain, and we're just there to conduct the business and get a paycheck at the end of the day. I worked at Staples in college, absolutely phenomenal corporation to work with, but whatever ideology or whatever stance they support, could that dictate whether I would be employed by them? Sure. But at the end of the day, you're probably just a teenager, somebody just trying to pay your college bills or pay your rent while you're working there. It shouldn't be a career job. I know it's kind of turned into one, but at the end of the day, I don't think we should be going after the people that work for these corporations. Look, they're just kind of hourly workers that are just trying to make a buck to pay whatever bills they have. So let's not target them, folks, okay? A little bit too much. The article touched upon bomb threats. This is really going way too far. The article touched upon bomb threats that targeted several Target stores in multiple states. These people are insane. This is the problem with labeling extremists, because there are some people that are actually extreme. So there is some truth to that, but just to make the claim that it's coming from right-wing people, I think is a little bit much, because you have no evidence to support that these are just right-wing extremists. They could also be on the other end of the spectrum. They could be Democrat side of the aisle as well, because Democrats aren't for people transing their kids either. However, local news reports said the bomb threats were made by an individual who claimed to be angry that Target was cowardly for turning their back on the LGBTQ community. Did you hear that correctly, folks? Did you hear that correctly? Local news reports said the bomb threats were made by an individual, listen carefully, who claimed to be angry that Target was cowardly for turning their backs on the LGBTQ community and decided, quote, to cater to homophobic right-wing redneck bigots who protested and vandalized their store. So this bomb threat came from somebody of what side of the aisle? Oh, it went to the leftist side of the aisle. The leftist side of the aisle, you gotta love it. But right-wing extremists, folks, threat to democracy. I don't think it's good to incite any type of violence or any sort of bomb threat. I don't think that's a good thing. It's a very, very bad thing. The article written by a retail reporter, I didn't even know there was such a thing, and a business reporter noted that Target decided to pull some items because of the backlash. Queer and transgender designers blamed domestic terrorists. So now we're terrorists, folks. If you don't want your kid to be trans, if you don't want your kid to be groomed by these corporations and activist teachers in the classroom and these Disney woke fanatics, now you're a domestic terrorist. Welcome. You should be on the terror watch list, I guess. So you're now a domestic terrorist for Target, for basically backlash against Target and going after their products that are on the shelves, which again, we all don't want our freaking kids to be trans. Furthermore, the article pointed that Target boycott with a broad brush that conservatives were upset with the national retail chain for selling LGBTQ merchandise. That's not true. It wasn't about a broad brush. It's all about, if you talk to most conservatives and Republicans, most people are like, if you want to push this pride stuff, whatever, and if it's pushed upon adults, hey, adults can make whatever decisions they want. But the idea that your products are geared towards children as well, and not just children, but like infants too, it's a little much and it's a little bit ridiculous. But these people on the other side of the aisle don't understand this aspect of what's going on. And wait till our last segment of the day where we have a clip of people debating the trans LGBTQ issue on Piers Morgan's Uncensored, because that one is head spinning. That's for our last segment. You have to hang a little bit tight till we get there. Well, again, they have tuck-friendly bathing suits, LGBTQ onesies for babies, and products from a transgender designer promoting Satanism, violence, and drug use. There was also a quote from the designer himself or herself. I don't know anymore. We're just trying not to get pulled here off YouTube. Basically saying that Satan was a loving and compassionate being. That's insane, because Satan is literally a destroyer and a destructive and evil being within itself. But this is the stuff they're doing, spinning, manipulating, all these crazy nutso things. Well, folks, I got to know what you think about it, because the article here cited experts on extremism to point the finger at right-wing influencers for inciting an anti-democracy movement. Do you think that you having the right to not purchase products and services from a corporation or whatever entity it may be, that because of the ideology that they're pushing, that if you don't support them, now you're an extremist? It just isn't that viewpoint alone extreme? Because if somebody doesn't want to purchase your product or service, doesn't mean they're extreme at all. Maybe they're just like, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't like their product. 2, I don't support whatever you're trying to push. And 3, I'll just go purchase it somewhere else. We saw this with Anheuser-Busch, or in other words, the Bud Light issue with Dylan Mulvaney. A lot of people, Bud Light's gone like 25% down. I forget what Target's at. Target was at like 14% last week. I think it's down like 15 or something. They just keep going downhill. But what do you think? Do you think Target is in the right here? Do you think these reporters are in the right for calling you an extremist? And also, does anybody here on the Ball Brad Show support Target? No hate here. If you still shop at Target, hey, whatever. But just curious here on a litany of questions. We'd love to hear from you. You commenting does yeoman's work in supporting the show and actually forces the algorithm to push our video out there to new viewers who haven't seen our content or our channel. So your help and support would be greatly appreciated. So we have all these outlets saying wacko things, and that wasn't the only one, folks, because in our next segment here, we have the New York Times article talking about Biden's age. And it's not just about saying and talking about his age. They're saying that he's sharp, fit, and having a striking stamina after him falling. I'm not kidding. This is real. And then the next article, which also comes from the New York Times, is talking about how the schedulers for the president are having to leave him alone because of his age. It's insane. Hit that like and subscribe button, folks, if you haven't already. So the New York Times is facing ridicule, just like the Washington Post in the first segment, on Twitter after an article Sunday painted President Joe Biden's old age in a positive light, describing the 80-year-old president as, quote, sharp, fit, and having striking stamina. It's like we're listening to The View here. Striking stamina? We talked about this. Axios has reported that the White House is having issues with his scheduling because he doesn't have the stamina. His old age is an influence on what they can do with him. So his hours are like 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. supposedly. And now they're even having on the weekends going, hey, look, we're just going to leave the guy alone. He can't keep up here. But we're supposed to say he's sharp and fit. He fell asleep during a 60 Minutes interview. What do you mean he's sharp and fit? He fumbles with his teleprompter all the time. All the time's written for him. He doesn't have to think. He doesn't have to use this. He just has to read and he fumbles. What do you mean? and having a striking stamina. Oh, okay. Like, his own White House aides are terrified that he's going to trip over a cord. And that's pretty much what happened with this fall from the Air Force Academy graduation ceremony. He tripped over a sandbag because he was trying to look youthful and prance and jog in a weird and awkward way. I don't try to make fun of the guy, but it's like, come on. It's a little bit much here what we're trying to do and spin this whole thing. I can't believe there's not more outrage from the press here in the White House press briefing rooms questioning Karine Jean-Pierre and the manipulation coming out from the Biden administration, I guess in conjunction with the freaking outlets here, the New York Times and others, hating this guy as if he's freaking, fit as ever. The New York Times article, written by a White House reporter, Peter Baker, Michael Shear, and Katie Rogers. Oh my God, they got a litany of people. Well, titled, Inside the Complicated Reality of Being America's Oldest President. Oh, it's so complicated. The only thing that's complicated and a complicated reality in all this is Joe Biden's own thinking. That's what's complicated in his head. He can't make sense of it. He doesn't even know his name. He doesn't know his name at all. Well, they claim that Biden's aides have been purposefully limiting his exposure to the media to avoid any potential gaffes. Then why are you saying he's fit and sharp and striking stamina? Why are you saying those things, but yet they're trying to avoid these types of things? We all know what's going on. We're not idiots. Quote, the two Bidens coexist in the same octogenarian president. Sharp and wise at critical moments. The product of decades of seasoning, able to rise to the occasion, even in the dead of night, to comfort a dangerous world. Oh, God. Talk about rubbing the shoulders and feet of Joe Biden. God, could you get down on your knees even more? Yet a little slower, a little softer, and a little harder of hearing, a little more tentative in his walk, a little more prone to occasional lapses of memory in ways that feel familiar to anyone who has reached their 9th decade or has a parent who has. Oh, come on. It's more than that. We all get old age, but the gaffes are a little bit too much here. Well, like many his age, Mr. Biden repeats phrases and retells the same story, often fact-challenged stories again and again. He's been telling the same story that his son died in Iraq. Like, for years and years it's been going on. And that's not just the only one. By the way, when he was, quote, mentally fit and sound, he was also lying about stories. The guy's been lying his entire life. So this is not the only time they're, oh, well, it's his old age. No, it's been going on for a long time. The article continued here. He can be quirky when children visit. Look, I'm going to be careful here because we're on YouTube, but we all know Joe Biden's weird stuff with children. He may randomly pull a book of William Butler, Yeats, off his desk and start reading Irish poetry to them. Make what you will with that one, folks. I'm not going to go any further. Well, at the same time, he is trim and fit. Oh my God. Folks, it's in the article. These are exact quotes. At the same time, he is trim and fit. Check this out. Exercises 5 days a week and does not drink. Okay, sure. Guy almost trips over a blade of grass, but yeah, you're right. Oh, he exercises 5 days a week. He has at times exhibited striking stamina. I'm not gonna get through this. I was trying not to break this entire time. I thought I was doing pretty good. If that doesn't deserve a like and subscribe already, I don't know what does, because I've been holding it in. Now it's just gonna be let loose. So he exhibits striking stamina since when he flew to Poland, then boarded a 9-hour train ride to make a secret visit to Kyiv. Folks, in that visit, by the way, they had air raid sirens going off, and they're like, oh, he was in a war-torn country. He was in the middle of battle, all these things. And then people came out going, yeah, I've been here for like literally months, and we've never heard an air raid siren at all. And it just so happens Joe Biden was there for 20 minutes walking up steps, and everybody had to make sure he didn't fall. That was the only time the air raid sirens went off ever. Even when he left, it still hasn't gone off. So, oh, he's in a war-torn country. Oh, yeah, sure. So Biden spent hours on the ground, sometimes literally, like we saw over last week, literally on the ground, or falling up a flight of stairs. He's falling down a flight of stairs. I mean, the guy falls everywhere. Who knows how many times this guy's fallen in the White House that we don't even know about. Then endured another 9-hour train ride. Oh, my God, he has to sit down for 9 hours. And a flight to Warsaw. A study of his schedule by Mr. Biden's aides shows that he has traveled slightly more in the first few months of his 3rd year in office than Mr. Obama did in his. Look, Obama sucked as well, okay? So, that's not a pat on the back from anybody. Steve Guest, a special advisor for communications from Ted Cruz, of Texas called the article embarrassing. Oh, I mean, that's being nice. Another person said the article is slobbering or drooling. Either one works well. Former Obama speechwriter Jonathan Favreau, who now co-hosts Pod Save America, said the article was pretty positive. Yeah, I would say so. What part of it wasn't positive? You're literally spinning and manipulating and gaslighting everybody about this president. National Review contributor said the article was not totally objective. You think? You think? The crazy thing is here, 25% of like the Americans will still vote for this guy. I mean, he's not there. You have other people on the bench for the Democrat Party that could probably do way better than this guy, I would imagine, or you don't. On the Republican side of the aisle, the extremists, the ultra MAGA, the crazy supporters, whatever you want to call them, threat democracy, which we're not. We got Donald Trump, beautiful than ever. We got Ron DeSantis. We got Tim Scott. We got Vivek Ramaswamy, who's freaking smarter than everybody combined, even on the GOP side. You don't want to go up against that guy. We have a litany of people. Democrat, Sleepy Joe. That's who they got, Sleepy Joe. Hey, he's fit, folks. He's fit. Quote, good for the Times to actually write this. It's still not totally objective, but it's a solid effort at least. Come on. I mean, those are in a positive spin at best, but more likely is that many of the presidential level decisions are not made by Biden at all. I mean, that part's true. We're still trying to figure out who's running the show, who is drawing the strings of the puppet on this one. We would all love to know. I mean, there's a story for you. And again, I am surprised every White House press briefing, nobody's questioning Joe Biden's mental capabilities. Well, what's even more insane about that, the same outlet, you guys, the same outlet, the New York Times, said this: President Biden's officially reportedly being left alone as often as, basically, his officials are saying they're leaving him alone on the weekends. They're leaving him alone as often as they can, just to tend and adjust his schedule to avoid wow, I can't even sound like Joe Biden now. Joe pressure. To avoid scheduling and tiring an aging president. This comes from the New York Times. So the outlet reported that officials have said that they try to leave the president alone on weekends and tend to schedule all public appearances between 12 p.m. and 4 p.m. They changed it now. They changed it again. I made a joke about this the other week. About, his schedule's probably later than 10 a.m. now. Okay, so when Jen Psaki, you're getting a real-time reaction from me, by the way. I haven't read this whole article. Jen Psaki was, I believe, on MSNBC saying, oh, well, the president doesn't do anything before, I think it was 9 a.m. And everybody was shocked by that. Like, I'm working already before 9 a.m. Usually, older people are early bloomers, right? And then it came out by Axios that the White House aides aren't doing anything past 10 a.m. Like, they're not scheduling anything past or before 10 a.m. Now we're getting reports here. This is breaking news. That now they push it back another 2 hours. Now he's not doing anything before noon. He's working 4 hours a day. No wonder everything's going to crap. The guy can't stay awake. Hey, he wants to run again, though. He wants to run again. The amount of deterioration that's happened with this guy is insane. But hey, that's who Democrats want. He's the front runner. If you want any representation of how the Democrat Party is, you're looking at it. Doesn't get anything done. Wants to wreck this country from the inside out. Wants to rub the shoulders and massage the feet of the Chinese. It's thing after thing. We can go on all day. We talk about it all the time. But, avid listeners of the Walt Brad Show understand exactly what I'm talking about. A Democrat who chose to remain anonymous, I would too, said this. They told the New York Times that Biden's age was a popular discussion topic among prominent members of the party. Think about how insane that is, that you have to be anonymous to recognize that the guy's old and a fumbling old guy. I mean, it's everybody. It's obvious, but for some reason, the Democrat Party, objective reality isn't a part of it. I don't mean to hound them, but in our day and age now, I don't understand why objective reality is so hard. Like, the Democrat Party literally believes that you can just morph into a different sex and gender. As you can tell, I got a beard. I'm as manly as they come, folks. I'm ripped, I'm jacked, I'm manly, right? That's a little bit of a joke. But I'm a man. I'm a biological male. They fully think, you guys, that I could sit there and shapeshift into a female. Like, somehow my junk just disappears, and I'm now all my chromosomes and everything's rearranged and switched. Like, there's no objective reality anymore. Again, wait till our last segment, our next segment. We're going to get into that. Well, at a small dinner earlier this year, the former Democratic senators and governors, all of them, in Mr. Biden's generation, everyone at the table agreed he was too old to run again. Then why are you chauffeuring him out again? Because he officially announced he would be running for re-election in 2024, folks. You guys think he's going to make it? And I don't want anything ill will to happen to Joe Biden. He's my president too, but for the love of God, folks, can we just all be adults about this? Adults in the room, not to be anonymous about this guy's age and fumbling, doddering old fool, because the New York Times is rubbing his shoulders. The Washington Post is rubbing the Democrat shoulders. I mean, who's next? Folks, I would love to hear from you on anything we covered here in today's episode. We got one more segment here. Don't forget to leave a comment. In our last segment of the day, we got this question. Can you change your sex, folks? That is the question for this segment. We have a clip here from Piers Morgan Uncensored, wondering should the T in LGBTQ be dropped here. Just listen to some of these people talk here. Hit that like and subscribe button, folks. You haven't already. Let's go.
And I'm pleased to say, joining me to debate all this evening is social media influencer Ollie London, a man who is in the process of detransitioning from a trans woman back to a man, and also by veteran LGBTQ activist Peter Tatchell and comedian and radio presenter James Barr,
this guy is nuts.
On this show as well. Also joining us down the line, Bev Jackson, co-founder of LGBT Alliance, which promotes the rights of lesbians, bisexuals, and gay men. Bev, thank you ever so much. We're going to start in the studio. I want to come to all of you. Join me here. You heard what I just said there. Peter, coming to you first. Am I over-egging it by saying I'm not allowed to talk about this because I'm a straight woman?
I think you're entitled to your point of view. But obviously, please listen to what LGBT plus people are saying. On this particular issue, it is very clear there are more than 1,000 LGBT plus organisations in the UK, mostly LGB, lesbian, gay and bisexual, and almost without exception, they support including trans people within our coalition. And trans people have been here right from the beginning. They were outside the Stonewall Inn protesting in 1969, which saw the birth of the modern lesbian and gay liberation movement. They were also in the London Gay Liberation Front in 1970 and 71, when we began all that half a century and more ago. So trans people have always been part of our community, and we think we should all stick together. United we stand, divided we fall.
James, coming to you because you're nodding along there. So then is it spurious to even suggest that there are these arguments happening, that there are divisions or strains?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely disagree with what you were saying. I don't think there are divisions or strains within our community. I think there's a small faction of people outside of the community who want to create a moral panic about trans people for no reason other than the fact that they are hiding behind that to push forwards their right-wing agenda. And actually,
there you go, right-wing agenda. Again, Democrat side of the aisle, there are a lot of Democrats that aren't for this stuff, but watch how he paints this picture and doesn't talk about the elephant in the room of you're targeting our children. That's the main point here. Most people could give two bleeps about what you want to identify as. I don't care. I have friends that are gay. I have friends that are part of the LGBTQ community. I don't care. I just want them to be happy in life and successful. But they even agree that you shouldn't be targeting kids on this. This guy can't wrap it around his head.
Disgusts me because, you know, we have a lot of rights in this country as LGBTQ plus people. It's outrageous to suggest that we close the door behind us and stop trans people getting through as well.
Now, one of my sort of thoughts when I was approaching this show this evening was that we didn't have a trans person who is remaining trans coming to be part of this debate. So I've heard from you both on this, but obviously, Ollie, you are in the process of detransitioning from trans. So I don't know whether the trans community will feel they have.
I think I just want to interrupt there, and Ollie, you can disagree, but is it not right to say that you're detransitioning from being transracial, not transgender? Did you ever come out as transgender?
I was transgender.
How long were you transgender for?
For a year.
Because I'd argue that if you were a transgender woman, you're therefore a woman. And if you're saying you're not transgender now, therefore you were never transgender.
No, I struggled with my identity my whole life. And, you know, it's the trans community. They're always saying, oh, you shouldn't question someone if they feel trans, if that's how they identify. You're not allowed to question them. So why, because I detransition, why would you question
I'm not questioning that. And
identity?
I'm sorry that you went through that, but that doesn't mean that everyone has the same experience as you.
Correct. Everybody has a different experience and they're entitled to that. But my issue is the trans activists that have hijacked the LGBT community and are causing real harm to the LGBT community by pushing gender ideology on children by forcing women out of women's spaces. That is my issue.
Thank
I don't
you.
have an issue with trans people. I have many trans friends. My issue is with the radical gender ideology.
So do you think there is case for the argument then that this show is premised around this evening, that there is a bit of strain in the community?
There's definitely strain. I mean, look, there are people that say that sexuality and gender identity should not be conflated. And I think the real issue is the more extreme elements of the trans activists that are pushing this agenda, that are pushing for all these things on children, pushing for hormones on kids and puberty blockers. That's the real issue.
But again, didn't you spend like £75,000 on surgery to look like a member of BTS? So should we not be talking about BTS indoctrinating children?
But then you could say the same about someone that's non-binary. You know, you could say, are they not allowed to identify as how they feel? That's all I was doing.
I'm just really suggesting
I was using the same logic. I'm using the same logic as woke people. You can identify as anywhere else.
Do you notice, I'm not saying the right side of the aisle doesn't do this, but do you notice a lot of these woke people will just sit there and continually interrupt the entire time without allowing actually somebody to finish a coherent thought? It's just something I've always noticed. It's just always yapping.
LGBTQI plus 2S, Two-Spirit. If somebody can identify as Two-Spirit, I can choose whatever I want. I was struggling with my identity. I've dealt with those issues, and now I'm trying to help children. The LGBT community should be coming together to help children, to find a solution, to support trans people as well, people that have struggled their whole life.
But in your journey,
I support that, but we also need to respect women. Men shouldn't be in women's spaces. Men shouldn't be in women's sports. We need to respect all people.
I'm going to come to...
I think, and you guys actually help me out in the comment section, because I watched a clip. I watched actually multiple clips of this. I believe it was a retired men's soccer team. Retired, and I think hopefully I'm right on the whole retired aspect of it. But I believe they were a retired men's soccer team beat the U.S. women's soccer team 12-0. 12-0. Retired guys are basically from a freaking beer league. Just beat a women's soccer team. But there's no difference between sexes whatsoever, you guys. It's totally equal biologically.
To Bev now, because Bev has also been kind enough to join us this evening. You've been listening to that. I hope you heard all of it, Bev.
Yeah,
go ahead. Go ahead.
With great interest.
Yeah.
Happy to join in this discussion. I'd like to respond to a few of the things, but first I think I should clear up that the title is perhaps a little bit misleading. I think this is not a question about the LGB dropping the T, but why the T was added to LGB in the first place. And people perhaps think that it's always been there, but in fact, in the UK, it was only added in 2015. And no lesbians were consulted at the time. The consultation was all with trans groups. And I think you would have found that lesbians would have been very unhappy. In fact, many lesbians were unhappy when they discovered that the T was added. LGB is about relationships. It's about love. It's about sex. It's about who you're attracted to. Are you attracted to men? Are you attracted to women? Or are you attracted to both? It's very clear sexual orientation. T and Q and all the other letters that have been added since then are about identity issues. They're completely separate, and it's caused a lot of confusion. We've seen how much confusion it's caused with Labour politicians trying desperately to avoid saying what a woman is, and that's quite comic. But it's also...
I'm actually really impressed with this lady. She's part of seems part of the LGBT community here, and she's actually making a great point that basically anything after is really more of an identity issue. And this is something we've talked about here on the Bold Brad Show, and just in the community space of Republicans and conservatives going, it never actually made logical sense to have the trans side of it there, because if you're a biological male that believes they are a woman and you like women, then you're just normal. That's like straight, right? So the trans idea there is encompassed even within the lesbian and gay aspect, right? I mean, do you understand like what I'm trying to say? It gets a little bit confusing, but you could still be gay. You could be a biological woman that thinks they're a man but likes women. Then you're just a lesbian. You're just a lesbian. That's all you are. So it never made sense to me, the whole trans community aspect being a part of the LGBT community. Then why have the G and the B? She's making a great point.
It caused a lot of tragedy, particularly for lesbians. It's no coincidence that LGBT Alliance was founded by Kate Harris and me, two lesbians, and our CEO is a lesbian, and also the chair of the board is a lesbian. It's lesbians who have suffered from the addition of the T to LGB. And I think your subtitle perhaps should be reading "Campaigners argue that the gay community has been hijacked." But anyway, so what has happened with lesbians? Let me explain why I'm saying that it's a tragedy for lesbians. What we're seeing at the moment, and you can look, that thousands, hundreds of thousands of lesbians are having their breasts removed. You can see tens of thousands fundraising on GoFundMe to have their breasts removed. And this is because it is no longer cool to be lesbian. In fact, I spoke to a 19-year-old recently.
Well, to be fair, I don't know if it was cool to be lesbian in the first place, but if adults are having their breasts removed, you know, hey, you're an adult. Choose whatever you want. I don't agree with that. I don't think you should do that, but you're an adult. Okay. Do I think you should have your arms and limbs removed just willy-nilly? No, I don't. That's a whole nother philosophical conversation that'll lead into like an hour-long podcast here. But the idea is that you're mutilating children. You're mutilating children. You're giving them certain drugs that are not allowing them to develop in the same way that they would if you just allowed the course of nature to evolve them or allow them to go into puberty and other aspects. And that you're allowing them to chop off and remove their genitals, which is detrimental for the rest of their life when they're not cognitively able to make certain decisions. We don't even allow our children to walk across the street without holding their hand, and now you're just going to allow them to make some sort of astronomical decision here? They can't even pick what they want for dinner. They can't even draw between the lines yet, and we're allowing them to do so. It's insane. And I'm going to let them continue, but you understand where I'm going with this.
Who said that throughout her secondary school, she'd been told she must be a boy. She must be a boy because she fell for girls. This is the kind of homophobia that is being taught at schools, taught online and spread by peers, so that lesbians don't feel comfortable about being lesbian anymore. This kind of homophobia is a real tragedy. And in fact, the fact that it is being propagated, I think it calls for a public inquiry. How is it possible? 10 years ago, you would have been thought a bit weird if you'd said that men can change into women and women can change into men. And these days, you're called weird if you deny it. The fact is, you can't change sex. Children shouldn't be taught that they can change sex. It's like teaching them, they can fly. They might jump out of the window and find they can't fly and they can't change sex.
You've brought so many times.
You've brought up a lot of points there, I'm going to say, and that is the kind of the issue with this conversation as a whole, because we're talking about so many different types of people. I mean, in and of itself, I find it fascinating that.
I'm talking about lesbians.
You're talking about.
I think the other people are talking about women.
The examples that Bev and Ollie give are totally unrepresentative. Yes, they happen, and I condemn them, but they're not representative. Britain's biggest lesbian celebration, Lesbian Visibility Week, which took place in April, was inclusive of trans and non-binary women. It was celebrated by lesbians. Lesbians themselves wanted trans and non-binary people to be part of this celebration.
I'm not going to let you get away with this.
Bev, I listened to you without interruption. Can you please show courtesy, be polite and courteous? Those lesbian women who are behind Lesbian Visibility Week, they included trans and non-binary people with the support of the wider lesbian community. There are a small number of lesbians who disagree with this trend. I accept that. They're entitled to their point of view, but they're not representative of the wider lesbian community.
I want to come to James now. You wanted to jump in. Bev, we will come back to you. We will come back to you, Bev.
Easy,
just go to the studio, James. You wanted to jump in. I was like, and I just broadly have a question. Do you find this conversation is going to, obviously we're not going to find a solution or resolution, but is it useful to talk about?
No, it's not. I actually find it incredibly boring, and I think the stuff that Bev is spouting is transphobia, and I genuinely believe that it's kind of amusing that you're talking about homophobia, because really you're just being transphobic, and those two things don't cancel each other out. They are not helpful at all. And you're talking about children being...
You gotta love this idea of like it's not helpful, but this guy's literally gaslighting everybody in terms of objective reality that a man can be a woman can be a man. It's just astonishing.
Indoctrinated. It's insanity. It's literally not happening. There's no proof of that happening. Ollie, you've just converted to the Catholic. You just converted to the Catholic Church. You're not concerning yourself with actual evidence.
What about children having double mastectomies?
Why are you bringing up conversations like that when you have not had that yourself?
I mean, can Ollie not speak to his...
You don't have to have something happen to yourself to be understanding of what importance something could be or what something could be in terms of detrimental to the body. There's a lot of health issues that you don't have to go through to know that it's not good for you, and you could speak upon about it. So this is a weird aspect of the LGBTQ community, or just a woke ideology, the left-hand side, the left wing of the Democrat Party, in terms of, well, if you're not that specific race, or if you're not that specific ethnicity, if you're not that specific biological sex, then you can't talk about it. I think that's insane. You can receive a lot of wisdom and a lot of understanding without actually being in that person's shoes or in that circumstance or whatever it may be. But I don't know what it is with people going, well, you can't speak upon it because that's not what you are. It's like, come on. It's like the people that sit there and shout about slavery all the time, but nobody of them were ever slaves in the first place either, but they're able to talk about it for some reason. It's just insane. You can literally do it with everything.
Personal experience.
Well, his personal experience is literally wanting to look like an Asian
this
pop
is
star,
a great
but we're not
example
talking
of-
about banning BTS, are we?
I'm allowed to speak. This is a great example of woke people. You shout people
Thank
down.
you for
you
calling
don't
me a
give
woke
people.
person.
Talking of inclusivity.
Yeah.
What
That's
about
what I said.
including women in this conversation? What about including women in
Women are
restrooms?
included in this conversation.
They're not, because
You've
trans
got one
activists.
right here suggesting
Let me
that she
speak.
supports
Let me
LGBTQ
speak.
plus
Let me
people.
speak. Trans activists are constantly pushing at women. Just yesterday at the Oxford Union, a trans activist glued themselves to the floor because they didn't want a woman to speak about women's rights. Is that
You gotta love these people that are like cementing themselves to the pavement. Leave them there. They're just cementing themselves to the pavement in the middle of the road. Leave them there. I don't care. Like they're like sewing their face to a rug. I could care less. Let them stay there as long as you want. Have fun with it. We'll all be there laughing at you knuckleheads. Now you're stuck. Now you're having an oblique moment because you can't think things through properly. Like, what is going to be the consequences of your actions? In the same way, they don't think things through all the way by allowing a freaking 5-year-old to determine what sex they are and just to have them have hormone enhancers or puberty blockers or whatever it may be that have detrimental consequences. Basically castrating children at a young age. It's not happening all over the place, but it is happening. You're indoctrinating people with one of these things ain't working. I'm pointing my head for those who listen to audio.
fair? Do you think it's fair that women aren't allowed to have a conversation, that their movement is just suddenly hijacked? They can't do sports. They're scared to speak up. Athletes are scared to speak up in case they're deemed transphobic for saying the simple fact that biological men have a competitive advantage. We know that. So let's let women speak. Let's stop going on about what trans activists
Talking of
Let's
letting women speak,
Ollie.
let's get out to Bev. Go on then, Bev.
All right, so I think you can see where that whole conversation's going. I want to give my viewpoint very clear. If you're an adult and you're part of the LGBTQ LMNOP community, I personally don't care. I'm libertarian and all this stuff where I just want to be left alone. I just want to live my own life. I don't want to put my religious viewpoint upon you. I don't want you to put your LGBTQ stuff upon me. I don't want to drive down my throat constantly. I just want to be left alone. When I go to the movies, I just want to watch a movie. I don't want to have stuff crammed down my throat. And furthermore, I don't want this stuff to be pushed upon children. They're already having a tough time adapting to all the mechanisms and all the things that are within their reality and their milieu already. Just leave everybody alone. Hey, if you're an adult, you want to chop off your genitals, I don't agree. I don't think you should, but it's your life. That's my viewpoint on it. I can't be any more clear on that. I have no ill will against the LGBTQ community. I want all of them to be successful, live happy lives. We're all human beings at the end of the day. I could disagree with what they classify as reality. I could disagree with their arguments and whatever it is, but I don't wish anything ill will upon them. Again, I have friends that are part of the LGBTQ community. I just don't want this idea to continually be shoved down all our throats constantly, as well as press upon our children. The reason why this is a big issue is, one, because the LGBTQ community made it a big issue, and two, they started targeting our children everywhere we look. At the grocery store, at the movie theater, in schools, on the internet. I mean, everywhere you look, it's being pressed upon us. And furthermore, I just want to add this little tidbit in here. And it's anecdotal. Has anybody noticed that the children that end up being trans usually have woke parents? Have you noticed that? I just thought it was an interesting observation where it's like every time you see somebody that's trans, their parents are also extremely woke. Like they're super far left. Let me know what you think about that one in the comment section below. Thank you always supporting for the Bald Brad Show here. Go to baldbrad.com, pick yourself up some merchandise, pick up yourself a coffee mug. I know they're kind of pricey, folks, but there's all that shipping and stuff involved, and somebody else makes it. Would love your support. Buy a copy of baldbrad.com. If you don't plan on reading it, hey, use it as a coaster, folks. You're supporting a Patriot anyways. And with that being said, I'll see you tomorrow here on the Bald Brad Show.